is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
All right, it's a beautiful thing. There he is, the man, the myth, the legend that is Ira Winderman. And, you know, I get to see, like, before and everything. He's got the timing down pat. He's set. He knows when to take off the glasses now. We're not catching him midstream anymore. That's strong by you, Ira. It's you're right. You're in regular season form now.
You know what? We had our summer league here. We've had our off season. I'm in training camp form now. We'll be even sharper. Maybe get the lighting adjusted a little better during the season. And then God help us when I have to call in from airports and you catch the traffic behind me. So yeah, getting ready to go back on the road next week. We will be here 3 times a week, twice a week on the Acura of Pembroke Pines report, and of course Wednesdays on Pallet Rack City Inside the Heat. So there'll be 3 reports from somewhere each week during the season here on the Big O Show.
That's a beautiful thing. It's going to be a fun season. And the way things are going now with the Dolphins, boy, we need the Heat badly right now. Before I get into the Heat, Zion Williamson, you know, he's had his share of injuries and he's kind of starting being labeled a injury-prone guy from all the way his days from exploding shoes at Duke. Fractured foot on that one. What'd you think about that? Because that kind of came under the radar and everybody found out about it yesterday in media day.
Yeah, the Pelicans are screwed. Between the coaching changes they've had, the front office seeming almost dislike with Zion Williamson. And again, when they drafted him, that's a very unique body. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make a football comparison here to you, and that would be to Tua. When you get someone who's not the prototypic fit, when you don't take the Justin Herbert, when you don't take the guy who looks the part, you're going to wind up with these ancillary issues. With Tua, we've seen the ton of injuries. And you know what? We've heard from the get-go with that torso and that build and that amount of explosion that Zion's just going to be a different test case. Like you said, we saw the sneaker blowout at Duke. We saw the injuries early on with the Pelicans and now another one. So, you know, it's really interesting. When do you get past the sort of injury-riddled, sort of injury-prone tag, or when's the time when you start going to yourself, yeah, we've got a problem here? It seems with Tua, it's been 1.5 seasons in, and everyone's on board. The guy is injury-prone. Of course, you have the Alabama fallback there also, and I'm not sure it's not the same thing with Zion. So there's 2 things at play here, Big O. One, the Pelicans have done everything to keep Zion Williamson happy, almost to the detriment of team building. Whatever works with Zion is what they do. 2, because he's at the point now with the rookie scale where eventually he can go somewhere, are other teams going to be as active in pursuing this jewel on the free agent market? Or are they going to wind up going for a guy who could become their team's injury concern next? This body build, and we can go back to the Corliss Williamson types, the Charles Barkley types. It's a different approach to the game. It's dynamic. It's athletic, it's explosive, but it comes with a sort of Part B problem list also, the exact same thing as Tua. When you sign Tua, you got his aggression, you got his creativity, you got his playmaking, and you got his injury history. It seems like it might be the same thing right now with Zion Williamson.
All right, so let's segue from one injury history to another. What'd you think of Denver signing Michael Porter to that $200 million extension? How much of a risk is that considering injury history also?
I think the baby steps they took with Michael Porter, him getting drafted later than they thought, giving him the ample time off, and then seeing the way he stepped forward. You know what? No one in New Orleans will say this, and no one in the NBA marketing machine will say this. But you could make an argument that Michael Porter Jr. is going to be and is a better player right now than Zion Williamson. And you see this in all sports.
Yeah.
When you come in with the hype at the start, you ride the hype until you realize there's nothing tangible there. And to a degree, the hype is being still ridden along with Tua. People still remember what he did at Alabama, and that's fine. And maybe it comes back. But right now, honestly, if you're asking me right now which of those 2 players I would take a risk on, I think Michael Porter Jr. has more of an NBA game than Zion Williamson. Now, you can build your team around unique. We have seen that done Look at the Warriors. They built around this unique guy who's going to shoot 32-foot three-pointers, and it's worked. Steph Curry is not your typical guard. Let's face it. If you were to put Steph Curry in a lineup of today's NBA shooting guards or the all-time shooting guards, no one's picking the runt out of that group. But the Warriors decided we're going to go different. We're going to have a three-for-all. It worked out perfectly. So I'm not saying that going with Zion and building with Zion is the wrong thing, but you go all in and you sink or swim on one player if you take that approach. Perfect example, the NFL and the Herschel Walker trade. And you trade a gazillion first-round picks for a player who was past his USFL prime at the time. You wind up paying for it. Going all in is really dangerous, and you better go all in when you're absolutely sold that he is the guy.
Yeah, and I'm with you because Michael Porter got injured where it's something that he can overcome in a way and have a normal career, whereas with Zion, you worry about his body and the force creating injuries.
Yes.
It's different. It's his game puts his body at risk, whereas normal players, even to Tua's sense, Tua doesn't put his body at risk. It's just that he is a smaller guy, so
Exactly.
he is at risk to get injured. With Zion, you're almost scared every time he takes off from the floor because
Yes.
how he lands puts so much, force and impact on his body and his joints that you kind of worry. So I'm with you all the way. The Michael Porter gamble seems to be the better gamble. Plus, he has the better NBA game right now for this
For where
league.
the NBA is. Zion, again, reminds me, you might remember this. So remember ESPN used to do those segments, sports science, and they would show the computer breakdowns on players, and they would show, and when this player is hitting an NFL collision, there is 82 tons of force or whatever. That's what Zion is. Zion is that freak of nature, the torque and the weight and the collision and all that. The numbers are impressive. It's unusual. Now, what I will say is this. When you're in New Orleans Pelicans, you don't get a lot of bites of the apples. No free agents go to New Orleans. So when you get a guy like that, you pretty much have to build around him because it's not like you're saying, okay, we won't give him the extension. We're going to go out with our $30 million in the free agent market to get someone else. When all the free agents are going to go, yeah, you're New Orleans. We're going to pass. That's not a market where I can market, which has been Zion's concern from the get-go. So it's just a tough spot. David Stern put that franchise there, kept that franchise there because of all they went through with Katrina, and he felt it was the right thing to do. But, there's a lot of cities, even in my sport, in the NBA, when you wonder how the heck does that city have a franchise? Number one, Sacramento. And number two, when you get past that, how are they going to keep a franchise going? Because this is a free agency league. This is a demand a trade league. No one's demanding a trade to Sacramento or New Orleans or San Antonio, or Indiana. So yes, if you go homegrown like the Spurs, you can have a ride like that, but you better draft great and you better stay healthy.
A couple of years ago before the pandemic, broke my streak of 21 straight years to the Senior Bowl. The last couple of years, Ira, every time I go, I find out if the Pelicans are home and can I get a game in since I'm right in Mobile and I'm close by. The last time I went, I bought a pair of tickets for me and my producer. We sat in the bottom bowl, maybe about 17 rows off the floor for $32 combined. Period.
Yeah, it's a nice thought. It's a nice story, but
empty. And the place was empty, and that's why I check Ira because I'll go to StubHub or whatever, and the tickets are they're giving them away, man.
Right. And not a lot of sponsorship there, not a lot of buzz there. And I know they try to do the right thing, but you got markets like what the NHL is doing with Seattle right now. They would love NBA. Vegas has shown through, even what we saw this weekend, and just the visuals and everything, Vegas can support any sport. They'll deal with the weather or whatever. They'll be fine. And NBA players have been to cities where they've learned to control themselves.
I was so wrong, dude. I thought the NBA was going to be the first league in Las Vegas, and then the others would follow Baseball, I didn't expect ever there, but I expected hockey and football. I'm shocked that the NBA doesn't have a team.
And
Considering how successful Summer League is, I don't think people realize the buzz that Vegas gets from Summer League. People love going to Vegas for
and the
summer.
convenience that you can get around, that you ride the monorail to the football game, that you park at any casino and walk to a Golden Knights game, that you're right there, that you
Right.
make a day out of it. There is enough population base there. It's a big, thriving city. So what I'm trying to say is I think there are cities the NBA probably would be better off in, but they have their loyalties. I understand that also, but in this era of TV ratings, in this era of free agency, it just makes it all that much harder. And that's why you should be glad we're down here, where people want to be, where a Markieff Morris takes a minimum deal to come here, where Kyle Lowry tells every other team, don't even call me. I'm going to Miami. I've had this set up. This has been in the works. Tamper, no tamper. I'm going to wind up being there anyway, with LeBron, with Chris Bosh, with Ray Allen, with Mike Miller. We've seen it over the years. And for that, the Heat are very fortunate.
And by the way, just to segue into the Heat, us Heat fans didn't get Zion, right? We didn't get surprised by any injuries yesterday, correct?
Well,
right?
we did and we didn't, because
outside
you
of
know where
Oladipo.
I'm going with this, because we never get an example of we never get a true answer with Victor Oladipo. You know, he smiles, he nods his head, and this is why today at the first day of practice at FTX Arena, Eric Spoelstra is going to say no questions of Vic. We'll let you know when there's an update, and I understand that because it really does seem to be a great unknown. I can't figure out this kid. I can't figure out if he's the kind of kid who's going to push every last ounce to get out there, even if he's 50%, just to show the commitment of wanting to be there and back in the game, or if he's been betrayed by his body so often that he's not going to come back at anything less than 95 or 100%.
I hope it's the latter.
And that's fine. But, you might hope that's the latter. But you know what? The latter might be in March, April, May, June, or July, and may never come again with the Heat. That's the problem.
Well, okay, but I mean, if this is going to work, Ira, I don't think you're going to argue with me on this. If it's going to work, be careful with this young man. Let him completely heal. So that way, if you're going to try to have him for some kind of a stretch, it has to be the back end of the season leading into the playoffs. I don't need you to rush and get on the court in December and January and February. They don't need you. The team is good enough.
I'm fine with
hold a
that. I'm
solid
fine with
playoff.
that unless it's too late. Unless you reach a point of, and you've been here for decades.
Right, the end of March or something. I get what you're saying.
Remember Alonzo coming back so late in that season, and they had this great thing going, and Anthony Mason was playing great, and Brian Grant. Zoe comes back for the playoffs. They run out in the first round. At some point, you have the line. So you know what? I would agree with you with this. Victor Oladipo should come back when he feels like he can contribute, number one. But also in Pat Riley's office, there should be a line in the sand on his calendar, whether it's March 1st, March 15th, April 1st, the point of no return, the point of this is us. This is our team for the playoffs. Let's get it cohesive. Let's get it gelled, and let's move forward. So that's the thing. So, yes, I agree. On this show and our Acura Pembroke Pines report, maybe we won't talk as much about Victor in November and December, maybe a little in January, February. But by March, we have to talk about him because we will need answers at some point.
I agree. I just hope they save him for the back end because that's when he could be something special. And I felt bad for the team that year because everything was going well with Mason being the center of the universe. And I understood what Riley was doing, but it didn't work out. It killed the offense.
Well, you always think
Joe wasn't in a groove at that time.
Right. You always think a great player can find a way, but as you know, and you see this in football and other sports, you need your reps. You need to be out there. You need your conditioning.
You need to be in playoff
dude. Yeah.
He had a transplant.
Yeah. So actually, this was pre-transplant, but it was coming back from kidney illness. But he was out with the illness, and then he came back after that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It was rough. All right. By the way, Lowry, and reading your stuff from yesterday, I love the attitude that he has, and it's and obviously he's a pro's pro, so you expect him to have the right attitude. But he is here to alleviate the load of others. He is here. He understands what he's here to do and kind of create for this team, right? That's the cool part.
Yeah, and the thing always this, and this is sort of a concern of mine. He can do so many different things that my concern is, can you count on him, and should you be counting on him to do them all? Should you count on him to be a primary playmaker? your primary defensive stopper, your sort of tough guy to get the extra rebounds when you don't have a big front line. So I think you can also put so much on his plate, but at some point you have to say, Big O, he's 35 years old. At some point you have to say to yourself, maybe you need to step back a little and not rely on it as much. So you know what, O? I'll throw it back at you. It's an 82-game schedule this season. How many games do you think Kyle Lowry misses this season?
10. I'm going to go with.
If it's only 10, there's a party at the Winderman house, so that's fine. What I'm saying is I'm not sure I have the answer for the 10 to 15 or 20 games that Kyle Lowry misses. So that goes back to our Victor Oladipo concern. It would be a lot easier if we knew that Victor Oladipo could step in for him. Maybe Gabe Vincent is an answer. Maybe Tyler Hero wrote about him at sunsentinel.com this morning. Maybe he does step in and plays some point guard. Or maybe Jimmy goes back to ball handling and so does Bam, and that's fine. So I think we know everything that Kyle can do. But you know what? This is a plate we are serving to a 35-year-old. You have to be a little bit careful there also.
No, I'm with you, but I think where he's at right now, he doesn't have to score all the time. He can set Duncan up. He can set Tyler up. He can set, Jimmy up. He can set Bam up. He has his options. As for running the offense, I think there are times that Jimmy can run it a little bit. I think Gabe Vincent can run it a little bit, a couple minutes at least in the back end.
We'll
you know
see.
what I mean? I think there'll be a little bit where he can share some of those responsibilities. Now, the one area where I think they're going to need him more than ever is, I think, on defense. Because until I see something from Tyler that tells me he's going to be, a stopper or or Strus is loose also on defense or something like that that's going to alleviate some of that defense, or does Gabe Vincent become, some kind of a defensive stud? That's the area where I think he will have to use some extra energy there throughout the season. But I think all the other things, he can kind of lay that stuff up to other people throughout the season until you get to the postseason, where obviously you want him to really.
I agree. There is some redundancy, in the lineup there for the other things. But again, everyone was talking at Media Day yesterday about the possibilities of Bam and PJ and Jimmy and Kyle and maybe Vic, and that suffocate the life out of you defense that they could throw in there in the playoffs. And that will be a sight to behold. And you know what? Then you won't have all this switching and Bam having to come out and help and running around like chickens with your head cut off. And everyone can guard your man. The expression.
And he's more of a safety. He's more of a safety valve now. And
yes. And Bam can say lay low a little bit more. And it's like Bam says, what you really want to do is guard your guard. Guard the man you're assigned to guard, not require help. We see it in football with Xavier Howard. You can leave him on an island. He's going to own Xavier Island like it was Revis Island. I think that he can do that with those 5 defenders also. So that'll be something I really want to get to. That's the Victor Oladipo question. Also, can you at some point envision a suffocating 5-man defensive unit where the other team ain't going to be able to do anything? That's another possibility. And Kyle, of course, figures into that.
By the way, what's up with the investigation on the Lowry thing?
You know what? I text the NBA regularly. Is this just going to go away? Are you not going to announce something if there's no finding? And I'm told it's still ongoing. Their thought is, look, we know one thing now, and this is actually important, Big O. They're not undoing these deals. Because if they were undoing Lowry to the Heat, Dragic, Lonzo Ball, and those deals, they would have been undone by now.
Of course.
So that's the most important hurdle. Well, there's not going to be an NBA draft until June. So if they're taking on draft choices, they have time for that. If it's a financial penalty, well, Mickey will still be rich whenever they send him the bill over there, and it'll be taken care of. So I think they're trying to drop it into a place where it's not in the way of something else, not in the way of start of camps, not in the way of the start of the preseason, and put it in there. Yes, I expect there could be some draft penalties. I expect there could be fines. No offense to the Harrison family. Couldn't give a rat's butt about that. Whether it's 10,000, 100,000, $1 million, or 10 million, it's not my money. And, I only discuss money on shows like this.
Doesn't affect the cap either.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. On the Acura Pembroke Pines report, I'll only discuss money when it impacts the cap. When so many people come to me and saying, why are you mentioning what a player makes? Why does it make a difference? I tell them, because this is a league with a salary cap and a luxury tax. That's why it makes a difference. I couldn't care what Myers Leonard made or didn't make and got in his contract if there wasn't a cap. but it was a cap issue. If the Heat's close to the tax, that is a cap issue. If the Heat get fined a bazillion dollars, tough break. You know what? We're still all going to try to break the news at 6:01 p.m. at the start of free agency. So I think minor draft penalties, I think financial consequences, no one's getting suspended. No one's going to lose. They're not going to tell Pat Riley, like George Steinbrenner, for example, or even the coaches in New Orleans with the episode they had there that you're away from the year. That's not going to happen. It's going to be something much smaller. And I think it's because it's something as smaller, their thought is they can take their time.
All right. Good stuff there. Bam. What'd you see from Bam? What did he say anything interesting to you overall? Because I know we've had this conversation of him taking the next step and assuming more responsibilities. And now that big ass contract officially kicks in, does extra pressure kick in for Bam?
I don't think pressure, because I think he's dealt with all that stuff and any step forward in most situations. The most interesting moment maybe of his media session when he was asked, do you anticipate, would you like to take more 3-pointers? And he just went, yeah. And he left it there. And it was like, there's 3 dots after that, to be continued. So I am curious about that. But, I have seen this way too often, including the days when Udonis Haslem played. We hear about how guys are killing it on 3-pointers in practice, and they're making 45 out of 50, and they're lighting it up from beyond the arc, and you never see it in a game. So you know what? This is what I'm putting on.
Don't they always show Ben Simmons hitting
jumpers? Exactly. Yeah, you could put together a Ben Simmons 3-point and free throw shooting tape and you think he's the best. Of course, you could also put together an Ira Winderman tennis highlight tape and think he's the best. So you could do it anyway until we see Bam Adebayo. There's 2 factors here, Big O. 1, shooting them and making them an actual competition. But here's the far more important factor, making enough to make the defense respect him. Because in the NBA, it's all about spacing. So if he's hitting a couple of threes and his man is still packing the paint, it doesn't help Jimmy Butler get to the rim. It doesn't help Kyle Lowry get to the paint. He has to do enough of them and enough of it that the opposing coach on the scouting report is saying, watch this guy at the 3-point line. Watch him in the corner. We know they're going to guard Duncan Robinson anywhere. We know they're going to guard PJ Tucker in the corner because that's all he does is shoot corner 3-pointers and make them. So if Bam wants to become an outside threat, it has to be at a volume that it also can equate to the defense putting it on their scatter report. And, we're a long way away from that.
Looking forward to it. Can't wait for the Heat season to start. We got our first preseason games
Monday.
October 4th, right?
On Monday, coming up on Monday after the Dolphins play Sunday. Try to get you a little more updates on our next Acura Pembroke Pines report on Friday regarding masks and what the Heat's rules are going to be. It's going to be very interesting. I mean, here I am. I'm watching a Panthers exhibition doubleheader, over the weekend. No masks, no vaccine requirements. So, it's going to be an interesting time to go to games this season. That's for sure, especially unlike with the Dolphins and the Canes at an indoor venue.
Yeah, and we got some cities where their players may not be allowed to play at home. So I wonder how that's
and a lot of cities that there are vaccination requirements. And don't kid yourself. I'm going to feel a lot more comfortable going into those places and being around those screaming fans than in places where there aren't. You know what? I keep asking the Heat about that also. And they sort of roll their eyes. We're not going to comment. Look, the political situation here. You're not just fighting the NBA or the local people. You're fighting the governor. You're fighting the state government. There's so many things in place there. I don't think, honestly, the Heat, even if they wanted to, could impose and actually carry out a vaccine-only requirement, or the Panthers or the other indoor sports teams. So I think it's sort of caught with the political football also. It's a very odd situation.
Bradley Beal, by the way, he stirred it up too.
You know what? I always defend the University of Florida players. If people know my son went there. I'm a big fan of the school. But to say that people are still getting COVID, it's like saying, yes, I got my flu shot this weekend. I might still get the flu, but I won't go to the hospital, God willing, with the flu because I have my shot. Yes, there's a very good chance on the 80 flights I've already booked this season and my layovers in the airports, I might catch a case of COVID being around others, but hopefully getting vaccinated means I won't be in the hospital. God, we talk so much about these players, whether they're role models or no role models. You know what, though? If you can't send the best message, don't send any message.
Right.
Stay quiet. Shut
Right.
up. 10% of NBA players
But
are
but
non-vaccinated.
there's a level of ignorance that they don't
Yes.
know any better. And
Yes.
that's
10% are unvaccinated. So we know about Andrew Wiggins. We know about Kyrie Irving. We know about Bradley Beal. But we also don't know about 20 or 30 other players. That's one thing. If you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything. If you want to take your approach, Jonathan Isaac or whatever, do it your own way. But don't start arguing. And I don't mean to do, there's a lot of bright players in the NBA, Big O. But I'm going to get my medical and my scientific and my empirical evidence from someone else. No offense. But I'm
right.
never going to go to Dr. Fauci and ask him to show me a crossover dribble. So I
No.
know who to go to and who to ask.
Yeah. So we could come up with an all DeSantis team now, with Beal and Wig. All right, that's another conversation. Anyway,
you.
Ira, thank you as always, my brother. Appreciate you. We'll
Off
catch
to
up.
practice tomorrow, full hour,
Yes.
9 a.m. with Clay Ferraro, Pallet Rock City, Inside the Paint. We'll touch on this and a lot more, get Clay's vaccination status, and who knows, by then we might know where Ben Simmons is going to play next season.
Who knows? Ira, be good, my brother.
Thank you, Big O.